Have you ever wondered what it takes to get sponsors for your podcast, or how many downloads you have to have, or how good, quote unquote, your podcast needs to be to get sponsors? Well, listen up. This episode is for you. I am answering the question in this episode, so stay tuned.
What's up? I'm Angie, and you are listening to Podcast That Pays, the podcast for online business owners who want to grow their business and sell their offers using podcasting. If you like no fluff, tell it like it is advice from a marketing-loving podcast agency owner, you are in the right place. So glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Okay, so this might be the actual shortest episode that I ever create in my life, because it's about getting sponsors for your podcast, which I don't fucking do. Okay. So why am I answering this question then? Because here's what I have to say about it. Yes, you do. This question, let me back up. This question came from my TikTok, because in the TikTok, I was actually talking about how you don't need a big audience to start your podcast. And this question came in response to that. So it was like, okay, well, you don't need a big audience, but don't you need a lot of downloads to get sponsors? If you don't know TikTok, TikTok shows your content to all kinds of people. It gets really good reach. And so this comes from a person who is not familiar with my work, who's not familiar with my content, right? And so each individual piece of content on TikTok is almost like a brand new piece of content for people, for most people who are seeing it. And so she doesn't know, right, how I work. But I thought it was important to answer this question. So the truth is, yes, if you do want to get sponsors, you do have to have a lot of downloads. How many downloads? Well, I believe, and this is just like from things that I've heard in the industry, things that I've researched very loosely, because again, this is not what I do. So you can feel free to prove me wrong, send me a message, send me an email and say, hey, Angie, this is my experience. And it's a lot different than what the fuck you said. I'm open to that. From what I know about this and about podcast downloads, is you have to have somewhere around 1,000 downloads per episode in its first 30 days of life. Okay. So in the first 30 days that you publish a podcast, you need around somewhere close to 1,000 downloads per episode in order for that to really be worth a sponsor putting money into it or sponsoring that episode, right? Now, I say that, but that is kind of like your bottom floor. And so when you have that bottom floor, that means that you're not going to be earning a lot of money from that one sponsor or from that episode. Okay. So this is why I actually teach, because the people who are in my audience are business owners, and I'm a big advocate of selling your own damn shit. This is why I'm a big advocate of that. I'm not saying that you can't grow to that point, but I will tell you that it is really unusual for business podcasts, marketing podcasts, to be getting those number of downloads in the first 30 days. It's just not that common. I'm going to be honest. So if you're sitting over there in the like 20 download club per episode, you're not that far off from what is average. Like, you're pretty average, to be honest. If you're up there in the hundreds of downloads per episode, you're actually pretty fucking good in this niche. Okay. So it's just not a something that is really common. And so I encourage you to monetize your podcast in a different way than relying on sponsors. I encourage you to sell your own shit. I encourage you to market your business with your podcast, right? And so that's just some realistic, based on numbers that are loosely made up in my head, plus things that I've loosely read and paid attention to over the years. So take it for what it is. And then from all of this, to answer that question, that's to answer that question. So yes, you can absolutely start a podcast with a small audience and make money. No, it's not going to come from sponsors. Yes, you need to have a big audience in order to get sponsorship for your podcast, you have to have lots of people listening to it. Yes, you have to have lots and lots and lots of people if you actually want to make really good money from it or decent money from it. Okay. So you can make a few coins here and there, but not more than what you can make if you sell your own things. Okay. So that is my answer to that question. Take it for what you want it. And if you have questions, don't forget, you can come over to my Facebook group, Launch, Grow, Explode Your Podcast. Shoot me a DM and ask me a question. Come over to my Instagram at Angie M. Jordan and ask me a question. Come over to my TikTok. It's Angie M. Jordan as well and ask me a question. And I will answer them here on the podcast. So I will see you next time.
Hey, if you enjoyed the show, head over to podcastthatpays.com to get started on your way to creating a podcast that pays. And don't forget to follow this show and take a screenshot that you were listening and tag me on Instagram at Angie M. Jordan. I'd love to meet you and show you some love over there. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. Let's get this money.